Now, a little bit basic, which I know Julianne will go into this a little bit more, is how to apply for financial aid. That is a part of the process pretty early on. Start to kind of gather some of the different documents now. Make sure you have the FAFSA application, and if starting to like upload those different things or be mindful of those different tax documents that you might need to know, and just start possibly researching outside scholarships as well. Obviously, universities are going to have scholarships, financial aid, grants, loans, all those things, but sometimes it is just nice to know about outside scholarships for certain things as well. I can use myself as an example. I know when I was applying to university, I was a double major in musical theater and psychology, and musical theater was my primary major. I was able to look at outside scholarships for young Black females going into the arts, and certain organizations that wanted to help support that. So things like that to kind of keep in mind as well.
We're very excited to have Ms. Schwartz here, who's the Executive Director of Student Financial Services for Manhattanville. She's here to present and also answer some of your questions.
Thank you. Hello. I feel very short behind this. Well, I am short. I will acknowledge that. Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us. We've got a lot to cover this morning for sure. And so now we'll move on to financial aid for families. Basically, how are we going to pay for all of this? Which is the first and foremost question on everybody's mind. And I just want to kind of start with what we were finishing up with. What questions should you ask when you start these conversations about college? The question that everybody wants to ask is, how much does it cost? And I'm going to tell you, do not lead with that question. Because what it's going to cost is complicated, it's complex, it's based on a lot of factors. And when your student is starting to look at schools and explore their opportunities, and you start looking at the tuition and fees page on the website, understand that that is not what it's going to cost you. So if you sit down with your student who is looking at Manhattan College or Mercy College, and they say, this is the school I want to go to, and you look at the tuition and the fees page, and you say, honey, you can't afford this. You're shutting the door on a lot of opportunity. So I want to talk to you about what are all of the opportunities out there to pay for school. How does this come together? And kind of get your brain thinking about what you need to look for. This is just an introduction. I'm going to say that as you actually get into the cycle of applying for financial aid and receiving your award offers from your school, receiving your award letter from your school when your FAFSA is filed, these are all opportunities for the next step in a conversation. So this is just an introduction, but I did want to lead with that. Do not go into this worrying about what it will cost. Yes, it's a concern, but there are a lot of resources, and that comes together actually at the end of, and when you come down to your decision-making process. So I just wanted to lead with that. So with that being said, so what I want to cover and walk you through is getting ready to be successful in this very complex, long drawn-out financial aid process so that you can do it successfully. We're going to talk about the FAFSA, which is the federal financial aid form. We're going to talk about New York State TAP, which is New York State financial aid form. We'll talk about scholarships, some alternate funding sources to consider, and just some basics of borrowing, and then we'll cover questions. These are all topics that are going to come up again as you really get into your college search. So just kind of starting out with how are we going to pay for college, or how do people afford college, right? How do families afford to pay for college? Typically, this is from a survey by MassMutual that came out last year, and they concluded that 45% of funding for college for students comes from the parents, directly from the parents paying into that students bill, whether it's from college savings plan that the parents have saved for, or they pay out of pocket, or they borrow. 45% is really typically on the parents. 25% comes from scholarships and grants. 20% comes from loans. So if you're wondering what is the average on that, about 20% comes from loans. 8% comes from self-funding. That means students who have saved money for college, students who are working their way through college, students who have the savings or a college account in their own name. That covers about 8%. And then 2% comes from family and friends, thinking that students, maybe grandparents, contribute to their college. So this is where average people fall in the scale of how much they pay for college, or how the college bill is split. Should say it that way. There's another way to say that, I'm sure. Skip the. So, just talking about getting prepared to be successful with financial aid. So, financial aid, the FAFSA application will become available in the fall, but at this point, you want to start thinking about what do you need to do to get prepared or be ready to start filling out all the applications and things that you need to do to be ready to apply for financial aid. And one of the things is to make sure you are up to date with your income taxes. If you haven't filed your 2023 income taxes, that will prevent your child from getting federal financial aid. That can also prevent your child from getting institutional need-based aid or state need-based aid, because that FAFSA application is used not just for federal aid, but for other forms of financial aid. So if you have not paid your 2023, yes, we're talking about 2025, 2023 income taxes, you still have outstanding issues with your income taxes, you do need to get your income taxes up to date and get on a good track with that. Clear up any credit score issues. So if you are looking to borrow money in a Parent Plus loan or co-sign for your child to borrow money for school, your child needs you to have good credit. So if you have credit score issues, work on cleaning them up. If you're not able to, work on identifying another family member who could be a cosigner for your student. So you want to have this prepared, talked about, discussed in your family ahead of time, so that you don't hit a wall because the time has come, but you haven't had these discussions yet. Review your budget and your resources. Like I said, don't ask up front, don't worry up front what the sticker price is on school, but you do want to go into this knowing what you can handle. Can you handle making monthly payments to a school of $200 a month? Can you handle making monthly payments to a school of $2,000 a month? Those are big, that's a big difference. You need to start feeling aware and comfortable with what your budget is and what your own flexibility is where it comes to financially supporting your child and paying for school. Identify your own financial goals. We're getting into our age where our children are going off into college. We're also starting to look at the balance in our retirement accounts. Those are two things. We are also looking at our parents who may need to have some financial support. We're reaching that. We're, as parents, coming into that generation of being in the middle of taking care of our parents and our children, and also have to take care of ourselves. So identify your financial goals and how does that fit into what you can do for your child. So with all of that information, start thinking about some realistic expectations for yourself as to what you can do to help your child pay for school. And this is an opportunity, if you haven't had discussions with your child yet about finance, budget, interest, borrowing, this is the opportunity to start having these discussions with your child before the decisions about school need to be made, because then the emotions come into it, but involve your child in understanding what your bills are, what your budget looks like, what your goals are, what your needs are. So how much you make. Does your child know how much you make? Many don't know that. Do they know what your car payment is? Many students don't know that. This is the opportunity to start sharing these adult pieces of information with your student, so when the financial decisions need to be made, they have a little more context. And then student contributions, these, I want you to take this information away and use this to your advantage, reviewing the student resources. So students, if they are working and earning some money, are they saving some money? Do you have expectations that they save some money for school? They need to have a realistic understanding of where they get their money from and what are they doing with it. Evaluate their spending habits. Do they stop at Starbucks every day on the way to school? Do they? Is that a good spending habit for a college student? Maybe not. At this point, they can, going into the senior year of high school, they can create a budget that includes a savings plan so they can start learning how to squirrel a little bit of money away. That is to train them not to be so impulsive and cut down in the impulse buying. And again, setting realistic expectations and teach them how to look things up, compare prices online, do a little budget, impose a budget for themselves so that they understand how all these pieces fit together, and encourage them to ask questions. So just kind of setting the stage for being successful in this transition. Then kind of looking into other aspect of paying for college is knowing where's the money coming from. Aside from parents and students who we just talked about, there's the federal government, and that's where the FAFSA comes in. From the FAFSA, you'll get grants, loans, and federal work study. New York State government also gives out money in terms of grants and scholarships. There are institutional funds, which we'll talk about as we get further along. There are third-party scholarships, and there are loans. So I want to give you a brief overview of what each of these are so that you can understand that these are available for you, and when these start coming up in your conversations about paying for college, you already have this little bit of information to work with. Okay, so studentaid.gov is the website where you will fill out the FAFSA application, and the student will fill out the FAFSA application. This is your homework, is to go to studentaid.gov sooner rather than later and start getting familiar with the information that is available on this site, because this is the hub where when you start taking out student loans, or the student starts taking out student loans, the student starts getting Pell, they have that relationship with the Department of Education. This is the website where all of their information will be found forever. So once you fill out a FAFSA, or actually I should back up and say, once you create an FSA ID, and the student creates an FSA ID, that same ID is that student's ID forever. I use the same FSA ID that I used when I went to college. Oh my gosh. Don't even say it. The same FSA ID, I had to resuscitate that 20 years ago. 20 years ago for myself at one point. Then I had to resuscitate it for my first child, and then for my second child. So it's the same FSA ID that you will use and your child will use. So you want to get familiar with this website. It has your FAFSA application. It has information about grants that are available. It has information about the loans that are available, how much you can borrow, what the interest rates are. Bless you. And it has also, for that student, when the student signs into their account, they will be able to see how much they've borrowed, what their total borrowing is as they go along, and further information about how their loan servicers. There's also information about loan forgiveness on this website as well. If you yourself have student loans that you're interested in loan forgiveness, you'll find information about loan forgiveness on this site. So just a couple tidbits about working with studentaid.gov. So when we get into the FAFSA application cycle, which will typically starts October 1st, I have low confidence in I'm so sorry, I'm trauma speaking. I have very low confidence in the Department of Education for actually meeting that October 1st deadline this year. I don't know if you've been aware, but it's been a very rough year this past year for the new FAFSA rollout. They redesigned, which is probably a very nice way of saying, but they redesigned the FAFSA application. It's an online application this past year, and the rollout did not go well. It created a lot of delay, confusion and delay, as Sir Topham Hatt would always say. There's still some lingering issues with the FAFSA that have not been resolved, so I am anticipating that there will be a delay again, but not like what we just experienced. I do think the application will be out before Christmas. I don't believe it will be out on October 1st. So you just want to keep your ear out for when that FAFSA is going to be available, but you're going to know because you're going to be checking the FAFSA, the studentaid.gov website. Yep, and they will send an email. That's right. So student has to create a FSA ID, parent has to create an FSA ID. There is a student portion of the FAFSA, there is a parent portion of the FAFSA. Do not allow the student to do the parent portion. Please do not do your student portion. They are two separate portions of the FAFSA. Each party needs to do their own portion of the FAFSA, and then those will get linked later on when those are processed. You had a quick question?
Is this something you can start before your student knows what school they want to apply?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the process with financial aid actually has nothing to do with what school your student is going to. So when these applications are available, your student doesn't even have to have decided they're going to school. They're like, no, I'm going to be following the Grateful Dead or whatever it is that they follow these days. Taylor Swift. I'm following Taylor Swift. I'm not going to college. But yes, they can still do their FAFSA application. It doesn't matter. They don't need to know. You can always, so when you do the FAFSA application, it will ask you, what schools do you want to apply to? And you could put in 1 or you can put 20, but you can always go back and change it.
I had heard that parents have to submit tax returns, is that true?
So this is the update with the new FAFSA application that's different from previous. So if you've done a FAFSA a couple of years ago, you did have to input information from your tax return. Now what happens is your IRS tax data is linked directly from the IRS, so it does use yes, it does use the parent's tax return information. That is the basis of determining aid eligibility. They look at what the parent's income is to determine financial need of the student. How much financial need does this student have? So that's all calculated based off of the parent income, and if the student also has a tax return, it will also be calculated into that SAI index. So that is all part of that. I saw a question. Yeah?
I have 2 questions.
Yep.
One, because I did it for my older daughter the first year.
Yeah.
And if you have throw 2 parents that are making working class parents,
Yeah.
you're not getting any money. You're going to get the $5,500 loan.
Yeah.
But the interest starts right away. Like,
Yeah, it depends on what kind of loan you're offered, right?
right. So what is the point of doing the FAFSA if they're not really giving you it? And what is the point of doing it if you're not going to get like money?
If you're not going to get Pell, yeah. So the FAFSA, it does give the student the access to federal student loans. That's the only way to get a federal student loan. So if your student is going to need the loan, the student needs to fill out the FAFSA. That's one reason why. The federal student loans are going to be the lowest interest rate loan option out there that's available for a student. The student loan is in the student's name and it requires no credit check. So of all the loans that are out there available, unless you have something I don't know about, the federal student loan would be the first one that you want to get. And then if you need more, then you pursue other options. So that's the first reason why you would fill out a FAFSA. Other reasons why, a major reason that is often not considered or overlooked by parents is that institutions like Manhattanville, Manhattan College, we also calculate need-based aid based on the information we get from the FAFSA. So our threshold for need-based aid is a lot higher than Pell. So you may not be Pell eligible. You may have an SAI index of 15,000, which would not make you Pell eligible. However, for our calculations for need-based aid, you would get need-based aid. So you don't know what, and I don't know what our model looks like for next year, but you don't know how that institution you're applying for calculates that need-based aid. So you don't want to leave money on the table by not filling out the FAFSA. So that's the other reason why. Also scholarships, if you are going to pursue scholarships, or the student's going to pursue scholarships, they may need to have that FAFSA information to verify income. They may have a different need-based threshold. They may not even have a need-based threshold, but it will lock you out of eligibility for certain scholarships if you do not have a FAFSA. Those are pretty compelling reasons for me to go ahead and fill it out. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't do anything to your credit score. It doesn't hurt you in any way. But those are all available funds on the table. I wouldn't leave money on the table just because I didn't want to do the form. Yeah?
Does the FAFSA application take into account where you reside? For instance, the cost of living here is so much higher than, say, Indiana.
No, it doesn't. It's one calculation for the whole country. So the SAI index that calculates Pell does not vary. So a student who, for example, lives in New York, does their FAFSA application, they get their return on their FAFSA application, and they know what their Pell award is, and then they move to another state with, if they move to California where it's higher, they're not going to get more money because they've moved. Or a student coming from Arkansas to New York doesn't get more money. It doesn't matter where you live. They use the same calculation all across the country. Yep. I know, right? Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Oh, you did. Thank you.
Clarify for those of us who haven't done this, if the parents file their taxes together, joint,
Yep.
is it one account for the parents, or each parent should do a
Each
FAFSA?
parent, every contributor to the FAFSA has to have their own account. So each parent will have an account, the student will have an account. I would, when you get ready to do these applications, this is why I shared the slide. I gave you the homework of checking out the website. There are also a lot of YouTube videos made by FSA.gov that explain 2-minute clips the details of filling out the steps of filling out the FAFSA application that I think might be helpful. Is there another question?
Yeah, I have 2 more questions. Is there like a set amount, like if families need under 200,000, they're going to get more than the 5,500, or?
Well, the loan amount, so let me talk about the loan, what you get out of your FAFSA. So federal student loans are offered to students. Like I said, there's no credit check. It is simply because the student has filled out a FAFSA and the student is eligible for federal aid. The first year student is offered $5,500. It does not matter what the income is. It doesn't matter what the school costs. That is what every freshman student in the country is offered, $5,500. You can't ask for more. They're not going to give you more. It's not an optional thing. You're offered $5,500. You don't have to take the full $5,500, but you're not going to get more than that as a freshman student. The second year, the student will be offered $6,500. And then the third and fourth year, they're offered $7,500. So those are just the FAFSA loans. And the loans may be split into, brain fart. Thank you. You know how a word just goes out of your head? I'm like, no, I just started financial aid, sorry. Subsidized and unsubsidized, yeah, thank you. So there is a need-based component to federal loans where a loan may be split into a subsidized portion and an unsubsidized portion. So if your student is ranked with need, they'll be offered a portion of their loan as subsidized. That means that the government is paying the interest on that loan while the student is a student. So the student can take out the subsidized portion in their freshman year, pay it back in the senior year when they win the lotto, and they don't owe anything but that principal that they borrowed. There's no interest calculated on it. So the other portion of a loan would be the unsubsidized, and for those loans, they do calculate interest based on the date of disbursement. So the fall, you get your fall portion dispersed, that'll start calculating interest in the fall. And then spring, you get the spring portion dispersed, that'll start calculating. So those will roll the interest, and then at the end of the student's academic career, all those loans are bundled together into one repayment, the subsidized and unsubsidized, plus all of the accumulated loans over the years. But that division of subsidized to unsubsidized is need-based. That is that portion of that. The other thing that the FAFSA application gives you access to is the federal Pell Grant. There is no magic number I can give you that tells you that, if you have XYZ income, number of in household, that you're going to get Pell or you're not going to get Pell. It has to go through the FAFSA calculation. I was just talking to a mom a few minutes ago how there's a proprietariness to that calculation. We can get close to it, but we don't actually really know what the magic triggers are in it. FSEOG is a grant for high need students that can be up to $4,000 per year. The FAFSA application gives students access to federal work study, and the amount available to students will vary from school to school, but that's a way for a student to get some work experience on campus. They don't have to travel far to have their job, and they can earn some spending money on campus. There's also the TEACH grant, which is available through, and you do need to go through studentaid.gov, fill out a FAFSA and an additional application for the TEACH grant. That's up to $4,000 per year. So this starts adding up. TEACH grant is not need-based too. So if your student is a teacher, is going into the teaching professions, they can still get a TEACH grant even if they don't have need. And also studentaid.gov website gives you access to PLUS loans, and those are loans for parents to borrow to help pay for school. And also when students get older into their graduate studies, they can borrow to help with those expenses as graduate students. And then moving on, I'm going to move on to New York State. Just to keep us moving, we can always come back with more questions. So the other site the other homework is check out New York State, hesc.newyork.gov, higher education, can't remember what it stands for. I'm having one of those days today. Yeah, HESC. So this is the website where you would go to apply for New York State TAP. And this site, too, is where you can explore other programs that New York State has to offer that help pay for school. Such as New York State TAP gives you, and this is in addition to your FAFSA funds, New York State TAP can give you up to $5,665. And this is, remember, separate application. You're going to do your FAFSA application, then your TAP application. ETA, which is the Enhanced Tuition Award, that requires a separate application as well. And that can give up to $6,000. It's combined with the New York State TAP. Excelsior is a program offered by New York State that gives students access to SUNY or CUNY schools tuition free. There is an Academic Excellence Award that is based on a nomination by your high school. So your high school guidance counselor would nominate your student who's excelled in particular classes for Academic Excellence Award, and that could be up to $1,500. That one you don't need to apply for. There is the STEM program offered by New York State, and what that does is it gives you an amount which is up to the SUNY or CUNY undergraduate tuition. And then and that can be used at other institutions. It doesn't have to be a SUNY or CUNY. And then there's the teaching incentive grant, which is for students who are studying teaching professions, and that goes up to the SUNY tuition rate. Lots of money available.
This only is applied if your student goes to a New York State college or university.
That's
It does
correct.
not travel across state
State
borders.
lines, that's correct. Thank you for pointing that out.
Sorry.
I forgot to put that on my slide.
Private and
And
public
public, yeah.
schools. There are some of these programs where some private schools do not participate. So Excelsior is one. Some of the STEM options.
Yep.
And some of the teach incentive grants. So that'll be important for you to look at. But we live in a state that is very generous if you stay in state with
Right.
your students, right? And there's a lot of opportunities and options in different schools, whether they stay close to home or decide to go to the Adirondacks or whatever. So
Yeah.
I really encourage you to have your students look at in-state schools, because there is a lot of money that is available if your student stays in state.
Yeah, so that is one. These are awards.
These are awards.
These
They're
are
grants.
awards. Yeah, yeah. So this is all free money. Just do the application, and
Not all is based on need.
it's not all based on need. Some of it is based on the field of study for the students, like the STEM and teaching are really based on the math, science, and teaching, engineering.
And teaching is for students that are going to be teaching. There are some stipulations to receiving that grant after. So your student has to, I don't want to quote it because I can't remember exactly, but there are specific stipulations to what they need to do in New York State as a teacher, typically to do
Right,
it,
right.
or it turns into a loan.
Yeah,
So that's the difference. Same thing with the federal
Teach grant, correct.
There are very specific stipulations that if your student's planning to be a teacher, that they need to abide by to keep that money from turning into a loan.
right. So you want to read the fine print.
Please read the fine
Yeah.
print, as you do with any government programs or assistance. Please make sure you read that and make sure that your student understands that before you go ahead and accept it. But it is great.
All right.
Is this also, the question was, is this also for the fall? Yes, you can,
Yeah.
you can apply for this at
After the
any,
FAFSA, yeah.
after the FAFSA.
Yeah. So you want to do your FAFSA application first after you've done your FAFSA application, because New York State requires you to do a FAFSA application to access state funds. Then you may do your state applications.
There's also federal repayment for healthcare workers who work. I'm a nurse practitioner.
Correct.
Some of my colleagues who are physician assistants and NPs. They're on loan forgiveness programs.
Yes.
And it's a huge chunk of their student loans that are paid back. But you have to serve the majority of your clinical practice in underprivileged areas. So like the greater New Haven area qualifies. I work at Yale,
Yeah.
but where I'm located, because of my clinical location, it does not. But that's another thing to look at if kids are interested in that.
Definitely, and it is on that FAFSA website. I saved that for my graduating seniors presentation about loan forgiveness, mainly because the political climate is variable, and we don't know what's going to happen with those loan forgiveness programs 4 or 5 years from now. And it's actually, you have to be in repayment of a loan for a certain period of time before repayment, or before forgiveness is triggered. So we're looking at something that's way down the road. So yes, definitely it is something to be aware of. Just be aware that things may change as well. So just don't make decisions based on something, for a career choice, for example, based on loan forgiveness. I think I saw, was there a question over here? No? Okay. I'm going to move on then. So those are the applications, those are the key applications that you want to kind of get a jump on, do those in the fall. Your child doesn't have to have figured out what school to go to yet. That's the first step. So just some other things to understand are going to be your financial aid offer. So now this comes into play when your child starts applying to colleges. So each institution will send their students, their prospective students, out a congratulations letter, which says, congratulations, we are so happy to welcome you into XYZ institution. We are so pleased to offer you this presidential scholarship for $20,000 a year. And they'll send you the letter. What they're telling you about is called a merit scholarship or an institutional scholarship that is coming right from that institution, and it is specific to that one institution. It's not your full financial aid because it's not including your federal aid, it's not including your state aid, but usually what happens is you'll get your initial financial aid offer through admissions upon acceptance, and that's going to give you the first kind of checklist of grants and scholarships that are offered by the institution. So it'll be merit aid. When you hear merit, that means it is based on grades. So that the institutions will have tiers. So the A students will get the highest tier, B students will get the next step down, C, and so on. They may offer other grants or awards, and some may be based on financial need or participation, like Erica was talking about, secondary applications that you may need to fill out. We have some of those where we have a volunteer program where students commit to community service hours, and while they're doing those hours, they also get a scholarship or grant that goes along with that service every year that's payable. So you're going to see all of these types of things being offered to you by various institutions. We talked a little bit about athletes, and I just want to kind of reiterate that athletics is not a basis for scholarships at all in Division III schools. In fact, when I'm talking to my coaches and they have a student that they are working with who is an athlete, and the student is appealing their financial aid award, they're asking for more money, I remind my coaches, do not tell me make sure the student does not tell me what a great soccer player they are, because we have very, very, very strict rules we must follow by NCAA, and we cannot give money. We cannot discuss giving money to students based on athletics. So keep the athletics out of the conversation, please, with Division III schools. Division I, Division II, NAIA and NJCAA schools can offer scholarships to incoming students. If your student, like Christina pointed out earlier, at this point as a senior, if they are going to a Division I, they would know already that they are on that pipeline because of their recruitment process. Division II, they do still have some wiggle room. And then we'll talk about some free money, which is other grants or scholarships that are not FAFSA or New York State, so there's a lot of money out there. These are funds for school that you don't have to pay back. And it's like having if a student works on getting scholarships, it's like they have money in their pocket. They can take it to any school that they apply to. They just have to let that school know that they have those funds. They usually require an application that might include an essay. They may have to share their transcript. They may have to share references. They may have to share information from their FAFSA, proof that they filed their FAFSA, and share their SAI number with the school. And it does require a little bit of work on the student's part, but I bring this to your attention because in my role and in my years in my role, I see very, very, very few students actually come in with money in their pocket with a scholarship. It's a very low percentage. I feel like it's less than 10%. Yet I know statistically, and I know because I do all of my reading in my field, and I get all the scholarship lists, that there is so much money available out there that goes unclaimed, unawarded every single year. And then when I do have a student who has done the work, it's like once they get that first scholarship, they're like, oh, that was easy. So I get those, those super earners, who come in and they have 5 scholarships and they stack them up. And this, I have a handful of students who have figured out how to apply for scholarships, and they do it every year, and they come in with a ton of money in their pocket, but they do the work and they figured out how to do it. So I just want to bring this to your attention because it's kind of, I feel like it's overlooked or maybe not discussed so much, but there's money out there that's free. You had a question?
I noticed when I look on various websites for schools, I could be wrong, are the schools, out-of-state schools, are they trending away from doing this in-state and out-of-state tuition, or is that like it was years ago where there's big gaps?
You're gonna see, it depends on whether you're looking at public schools or private schools. So where you see in-state tuition and out-of-state tuition, the state, those types of tuition tiers, those are state schools. And sometimes what gets confusing is we don't realize we're looking at a state school because it's out of state, it's not a name that we're familiar with, but it's in Indiana. The website looks beautiful. They've done a great job presenting this beautiful campus. It doesn't look like a state school, and then when you get into that tuition and fees page, that is your tell. So when you see the tuition tier like that, that means that they're a state school. Private schools don't have tuition tiers based on the state residency. Did you have another thought to that, Christina?
We were looking at, we were just having this conversation
with a parent. If you're looking at one of the Power 5 schools, if you're looking at an Alabama, and you're looking at their main campus, you're looking at a Penn State main campus, there is not much right now discrepancy in state versus out of state when we're talking about flagship large state universities. So that I think is important. I think that may be what you're seeing because they don't need to worry about that. If they're a state student, let's take Clemson, they're gonna get South Carolina aid, so they're not gonna worry that much about making their tuition different at their prime, flagship school. Same thing with Penn State. In fact, Penn State, a lot of Pennsylvania state students don't get in to the flagship Penn State State College campus their first try. They get told you can start at Bradford and then come your sophomore year, reapply or transfer in your junior year. So you're really working in a different tier, a different level of political complexities if you're looking at some of those flagship schools. But that's where you're gonna work with the counselor. They should be very upfront. I mean, Erin can tell you, she sits next to them at college fairs. They're gonna be upfront with you about what that looks like. That's the nice thing about state schools is that they really have to make sure that they're very transparent. We're very transparent, Manhattan's very transparent, but they are required by law to be very transparent. But that may be where you're seeing some of those not big swings in state and out of state costs.
Yeah, definitely. And so going back to scholarships, talking about scholarships, trying to look for scholarships, your students have been inundated with targeted ads and emails, marketing emails for these scholarships. All you have to do is just give us your cell phone number, your email address, all of that. And no essay scholarships, they're out there, believe me. But the best scholarship resources actually come from right here in your own school, pardon me, in your guidance office. You want to think about this in terms of the least competition. There are, you have a small school here. There are, excuse me, this is where I'm talking too much now. So sorry. So the scholarships that are, you want to finish for me?
using your guidance office?
As the first stop to finding scholarships. And the reason why we say that is because they have knowledge of previous years and students that have applied to different things and been successful in applying to those scholarships, maybe have an idea of what that scholarship foundation is looking for. They may also be thinking of opportunities for your specific student because they do receive emails and information from local places and then obviously national scholarships. They're a great first resource. Another one is if some schools, some colleges and universities do list recent scholarships that students have brought in, and those foundations. I also encourage, if you're involved in, like if you are religious or a part of a community organization, speaking with them. A lot of them have college assistants or, different people that you can go to. If your student works, I'm from upstate New York, so Wegmans, if you worked at Wegmans when I was in high school, they had a scholarship program, and so everyone tried to work at Wegmans, right? But those are great options. I feel like Trader Joe's does something like that. So making sure, and I will say this also, I worked for a country club up in Syracuse, and they had a fund for employees that were going to college, so you could apply for that. It was much nicer because there were only about 5 of us that had to apply, and so I think what they ended up doing is probably giving us all a little bit. But those are things too. So those are important pieces to look at and not just rely on the internet. Please don't just rely on the internet. That's
because it's flashy. It's like get $10,000 a year, or just all you have to do is give us your email address, $10,000 a year. Those are lotteries. What those are actually are marketing schemes. They're just trying to get your contact information, not to market scholarships to you, or to the student, but to market things like their first credit card, their first car loan. They are getting that demographic information to the most important consumer group in the country. And your student is just handing it to them. So that's when you see those no application scholarships, all you have to do is give us your contact information. That's really what it is. I want you to help your student zero down on the smaller pool of competition. That's where your local scholarships really come in, and that is where you are most likely to be successful. So start with your guidance office. And like Christine was saying, community foundations, any organization that your student or your family has participated in, volunteered in, all of those are places to ask if they have a scholarship available. And if you as a parent belong to a professional organization, you're a real estate agent, you're a CPA, you're in law enforcement, you're a pipe fitter, all of those organizations, I have seen scholarships come from for students at Manhattanville. Other selective scholarship opportunities, organizations, now this is where the students needs to start doing some thinking. What is the student planning to study? Is the student going to be a CPA? Is the student going to be a nurse? Those organizations also offer scholarships to students in college. So those are places where students can do a little bit of Googling to find the professional organizations for accountants, professional organizations for nursing, professional organizations for physical therapists. Those organizations also provide scholarship opportunities. Ethnicity-based organizations provide an abundance of scholarships. Organizations or associations related to hobbies or interests. Does your student like to ride dressage? Is your student into ballet? Is your student into musical theater and is a female of color? These are all interests, hobbies that can translate into scholarship money. Did you get scholarships for that? You did. Yeah, so Erica's a good example. And scholarships related to distinct qualities or characteristics. were you born in another country? Your student was born here. Were you born in another country? There may be scholarships available for students who are directly descended from Czechoslovakia, or, you know, and just trying to come up with names. But these are all individual characteristics that may translate into scholarship dollars. And I have some links here, and I'll share this PowerPoint so that it can be shared with you, so you don't need to write anything down. But there are some links here. The Department of Labor offers a scholarship finder tool. Sallie Mae, yes, they do loans, but they also do offer a very good scholarship search site. Scholarships.com, Big Future, FastWeb, Scholarship Owl. These are all some resources, and they actually are scholarship search engines. So it's not that there's just one scholarship attached to each of these links. What the student finds when they get in there is they build a profile for themselves and can start looking for scholarships based on all of those individual characteristics we were just talking about. And this is, I'm going to go back to Erica's suggestion before. She said, create an email account for college stuff. This is my tip too, is create a Google account specifically for your college search information and your scholarship information, and use the tools. Use the calendar. So your student's going to start looking for scholarships, and oops, I missed the deadline. Well, you know what? That scholarship happens every year. Put it on your calendar. Put that link right in your calendar for when you want to apply for it next year, because you have 4 years or more that you want to apply for. So use the calendar tools, use the reminder tools, use the task list, and use that email for your college application information and your scholarship information for 2 reasons. One, it keeps it from getting mixed up with all of the other email that the student's getting in their regular email box. And the other reason is when the student is done with it, because inevitably you will get a lot of marketing information attached because you start seeking information, you know this too. They can kill that email account or the Google account when they're done with it. They don't have to live with that type of contact for the rest of their lives, because believe me, if you don't do that, they will keep after you. Because like I said, there's marketing attached to all this. Some search tips to take away real quick. Target scholarships that are more selective, means less competition. Use Google search carefully, using those terms or those characteristics that kind of narrow it down for you. Use those scholarship search sites. Don't overlook the smaller awards. So the bigger the award, the more competition. There are probably close to 50 million students who have put their email address in one of those $10,000 a year for 6 years scholarship things. It hasn't been awarded yet. It's like Publishers Clearinghouse. I don't know if you guys remember that. Sweepstakes. It's the same process. But there's nothing that says that you can't have multiple awards. And this is where I see those high earners or those high winners go after the $100 scholarship for $100 for 4 years, every year for 4 years. Get 5 of them, get 10 of them. There's nothing that says you can't do that. Those scholarships that are for a little bit amount of money are the ones where 20 students have passed and, swiped past that because it wasn't worth their time. It's less competition. You're more likely to get it. So go ahead and do those applications for those little tiny scholarships. Do lots of applications for the tiny scholarships because you're more likely to get them. Make sure you follow, make sure you help your student with this, get them rolling on this. Make sure they're reading the instructions carefully and they're following the instructions and the due dates, because these organizations will throw out your application if you don't, because of the volume of applicants that they have. So you don't want to lose the money just because you didn't follow instructions. Again, save links to your calendar. Never, ever, ever, ever pay money to apply for a scholarship. Never pay money to fill out a FAFSA. Never pay money to fill out a TAP. These are all things that are free and should be free. And when it comes to scholarships, in your application, I would also say, do not put social security numbers in scholarship applications. They may ask for your social security number in order to pay. You can always check the Better Business Bureau to make sure it's legitimate if you have any qualms before providing that, but you should never have to provide a social security number to simply apply for a scholarship. They may want information from your FAFSA. They may want your financial aid report or your SAI report, but you don't need to provide a social security number to apply for a scholarship. And don't give any personal or banking information in an application. So this is an opportunity for you to work with your student to teach some discernment about the types of information it's safe to share, and to develop a winning strategy about going after scholarships. It does require effort, so they're not going to get the first scholarship they apply for. They just have to, this is persistence. You have to teach, there's so many learning opportunities in this process. Teaching them persistence, teaching that it's okay to not win every time, create that Google account to manage your search, do a little self-reflection, create a personal inventory about those attributes about yourself so that it helps guide your search for scholarships. Work on that great essay about yourself, research the scholarship opportunities. The school librarian is or your community librarian is a good resource, and apply and keep applying. So these are all takeaways that I'd like for you to work with your student on to develop these skills. And Christina was talking about employment. Other sources to consider to pay for college are some service opportunities like AmeriCorps, National Health Service Corps, Peace Corps, military programs, student jobs. We don't think about it, but a lot of those companies that hire students, Burger King, Target, Lowe's, all of these, just to name a few, they all have scholarship opportunities. So that's another place for that. And then some kids also do GoFundMe to raise some money, maybe for book money. I added up my books. I need $400 for my books. And they do a GoFundMe with their family and friends, and they raise the money that way. And then now we're going to talk about loans real quick, just so you get some basics. There are a couple different loan options out there for families to consider. Now the first loan that is, in my mind, the go-to loan would be the student's federal student loans. These are the loans we talked about a little bit earlier. These are the loans the student gets access to when filling out the FAFSA. It's $5,500 the first year. Remember, it goes up to $65, second year, $75 for the last 2 years. There is also federal money available for graduate schools as well. It's guaranteed to all eligible FAFSA filers, but you don't have a choice of taking more money. You're limited in the amount you can borrow. And then there's the subsidized and unsubsidized portions. That's my go-to because those federal loans are going to offer your student the lowest interest rate available to student borrowers. There's also going to be flexibility in repayment terms. The federal loans offer the tiered repayment amounts based on your income. So you have an income-based repayment schedule. That's the word I was thinking of. With the federal loans that you might not get with a private loan. So you have more flexibility with federal loans. But then there are alternative loans that are available. Those are like private loans. Those are Sallie Mae, Chase, Discover are some companies that offer alternative loans that a student can borrow. These require a co-signer with good credit. Remember what I said at the beginning. If you have credit or tax return issues, it's time to clean those up, because this is where your student needs that information. And then there are federal loans, Parent Plus loans for parents. That's where a parent can borrow federal funds through that FAFSA website to help students pay for school. And the interest rate tends to be lower than what you can get out in the public market, but you still want to do your homework on that. And then there's private education loans, again, like Sallie Mae, Discover, Wells Fargo, for parent borrowers. And all parent borrowing requires a credit check. So you don't have that guaranteed loan like you do with with the student loans. Just real quick, guidance for responsible borrowing: only borrow what you need for school expenses. So this is where at the end you're going to need to work with your financial aid office or your admissions counselors to understand, after all of the financial aid is applied, what is my out of pocket? What do I really have to pay? And that's the thing where I said, remember, don't lead this search with how much does this school cost, because the school cost that you see on the website will be reduced for you based on the aid that your student earns. So it's going to be reduced based on how much Pell, if the student got Pell, that takes some money off of that cost you see on the website. Does your student take out student loans? So that reduces that out of pocket a little bit more. Did your student get merit award? That reduces that number you see, that cost on the website, a little bit more. So figuring out how much it's really going to cost you doesn't really come into play until you've done all the homework associated with financial aid. You've done your FAFSA, your TAP application, you've done the scholarship search, you've got your merit award. Then you can start working with the schools that your student is interested in looking at to figure out what the out-of-pocket is. And we talked a little bit about the timing of being able to get that financial aid information from a couple of schools and going back and kind of using that to negotiate aid. You can do that, but that does require that you've done your financial aid homework as soon as possible, to have your award letters from multiple schools so that you can go back and talk to the schools that your student's looking at and say, look, I got, my out of pocket. It's not what your scholarship is that matters, it's what your out of pocket is. My out of pocket with this school is $10,000. My out of pocket with your school is $12,000. Can you bring your out of pocket down to the 10 or to be better than this? And that's where that negotiation comes in. Again, it's going to be based on what you're paying out of pocket, not just what the merit award is. I'm not sure how many more slides I have left. Sorry. So I think I'm coming towards the end. Oh yeah, I am. So just thinking for ongoing financial planning, all of these steps with financial aid, this first cycle is going to be the hardest because it's all brand new. But these applications for FAFSA and New York State TAP, you do have to do those every year. So it's not a one and done kind of thing. So just keep in mind that all of the financial aid activity needs to keep going. Scholarship searching, that you still need to keep working on searching, or the student needs to keep working on searching for scholarships. And it's always a good practice to just check yourself with, remember, your financial goals, what you're able to pay, how's this working for you every year before the next cycle starts, so that you have a good handle on your finances as a family. Many institutions have payment plans, so just aside from all the financial aid that's helping you reduce your bill, payment plans can help you take care of paying for the bill while the student's in school. So that's another option that you might want to consider and ask about with your institutions. And again, don't consider that cost, that tuition and fees page on the website, when you're applying to schools. That conversation comes in later, after you've received all of your aid offers. And continue to attend events. This is so great that all of you are here today. I'm really glad that you've put up with me chatting for so long. But continue to attend the events, because this is the applications, admissions cycle season. Thank you. There are a lot of steps going along the way. This is just your foundation. There is, you will actually have to get into your FAFSA and do your applications, and you'll have questions. You'll have more questions as we go through each step. Continue to participate, and you will feel more comfortable and more informed when it does come time for that decision to be made. And I think we're down to, if anybody has more questions, have at it. Hi.
I have one other question.
Sure.
For the FAFSA, so next year, if you have 2 kids in school now, will you be eligible for more?
No, that is one of the things that was changed with the new FAFSA calculation. So it used to, be that you did get more as a family, or more as a family, based on having multiple students in school during the time where both students were in school. The new calculation is different in that it doesn't, so what would happen, sorry, let me back up a second. So what would happen is when you went, so you have two students in school, they're 2 years apart. While they're in school, you get more money. But then when you go back, the first one graduates from college and now you only have one in school, then you get less money, right? So it would kind of ebb and flow a little bit. Now, from what I'm told and what I understand about the calculation is that they don't use that number in college as a factor anymore in the calculation. They use the overall household size, and that number, so it gives this is what I'm told, like I said, don't, I don't know the math because this is that secret calculation. But what they've done with the calculation is that you end up getting a little more, but that amount more remains consistent for the student, for both students throughout their college experience. So it actually gives them access, gives more students access to Pell, is what I'm told. I don't know how the calculation works. I just know it's no longer a factor, but it's mitigated over time because I'm getting into the weeds, and this is one of the, it's not, and you not see it, yeah.
Previous years, if you had you had a student that is a sophomore in college, now you have one
As a freshman, you would have seen a difference. You would have seen an addition because you have two in school.
Right.
Now what is our understanding is that they're saying you have a total of 5 people in your family, so you're getting an incremental increase overall, as opposed to this fluctuation because someone's in college. Some schools, like Manhattanville, we are asking how many students or household individuals are in college because, like Julianne said, we do give institutional need-based aid. Those are Manhattanville grants. Manhattan may have something, other schools might have it, but we are in some of our modeling taking that into consideration. So if there is a question on a school's application, how many students do you have in college, or how many siblings are in college, because your student will be filling it out. Make sure they're filling that out accurately. There's also a section in every application that asks for parent and sibling information. Make sure that that's accurate, especially if you have students in school. I can only speak for Manhattanville in terms of what our financial aid model looks like for need-based, and we do take that into small consideration with our calculations, at least for this year. So we're reviewing models from fall 24 class to review for fall of 25 class.
Yep.
So there are some things that were great about, I'll be very honest, right? I don't care, I don't work for the government. There were some things that were great for all of you and your students, for the FAFSA, for the changes, for completing it, for higher threshold of need that will receive need. And I think that there were some things that changed that may have impacted certain groups that they didn't anticipate, or it was a cost benefit that they reviewed. So that's my personal opinion, and I don't really care.
Like, it's still not done.
And they are tweaking it.
Meaning they're separated, filing separately. When the student and the parent go through the FAFSA, it will require that both parents do participate, but it does have questions that tell you which is the primary contributor for that student. It's usually the one, yes, it usually does fall on the one who's claimed the dependent, or the one that the student is living with. They can be two different things, yes. at the end, they get tax information from both of you. I would read through the steps, because this is one of the ones that's been very muddy for everybody, because the way they ask the question is not clear. Read through the steps as you do the application. I'm hoping that'll provide more clarity, but the default tends to be the parent that the student is living with. But do read through the steps, because that is one of the problem areas of this current cycle's FAFSA application. But yeah, when we get into those FAFSA workshops and things like that, we'll have up-to-date information. We can give clearer information. You want me to be done?
I don't, but
Yes, we do have to get in the time frame. So.
But thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.